So we're going to just take a few seconds, and we're going to just shout out some of those answers you may have. Again, what is narrative? How do you define narrative? And we're going to define it in a moment when we hear some more of your answers. So I'm going to take a moment.
And as folks are coming in here in the chat, we want to hear from all of you. As Joshua has mentioned, we also want to welcome the folks that are joining us via Facebook Live. So just wanted to let everyone know that we are now live on the NIC Facebook page. Back to you, Joshua.
Thank you. Thank you. So looking at some of your answers in the chat, someone is saying a narrative is perspective, framing of a story. A narrative is a story as told by the author. So, keep those coming. There's no wrong answers so far, from what I can tell. A narrative is a story told by the author. It's how someone tells a story. That's great. All right, I know we have a few more guesses on what narrative is and what it means to you and your work. A way of explaining the world and that gains traction. So the vibe surrounding an issue, telling a story from a lived perspective of the teller. A beautiful truth. Poetic perspective there. I like that one.
Just to highlight some of these other things in here, Joshua, I think it's great how everyone is focusing on who the audience is for the narrative. So who the narrative is speaking to, and then who is speaking that narrative. So the voice behind the narrative, as well as who's hearing that voice. Some of these things coming out, your worldview, the narrative of the person telling, and then who is receiving that narrative and what it tells them about the speaker. So yeah, just like Josh was saying, these are great ideas coming out here.
Okay, so we're now going to take a moment to define some of the textbook examples of what a narrative is. And as you can see on the screen, I'm going to read it out loud for those of us whose eyes are tired of looking at screens and reading things. Definition of a narrative, this is by the Migration Policy Institute. If you don't know who the Migration Policy Institute, who they are, so the great think tank that pumps out a lot of content and data around issues impacting migration. So they've been a huge resource to some of the work we do at Upwardly Global, and I'm sure some of you are quite familiar with them. They most recently put out some studies on how narrative and just really interesting work as it relates to immigration. So their definition, a narrative is a way of seeing the world, issues, other groups that is accepted as true by a critical mass of people. This way of seeing informs what people think, believe, and do, and what they see as normative. The narratives people accept as true also shape their responses to their own lived experiences and are sustained and advanced through storytelling. Okay. What are some of the building blocks to a narrative? A narrative is made up of things, right? So building blocks are the stories, right? The stories people hear and see and experience over time that shape how they see opportunities and treat threats around them. Stories are typically embedded in a frame that communicates values. The way stories are framed provides a clear definition of a problem and its solution, and the designation of blame or responsibility. Frames also inform messaging strategies that dictate how stories are told, okay? So really great definition about narrative and some of the things we hope to dig into over the next few minutes with everyone, okay? So I'm going to kick it off to talk about more about how narratives impact the work we do and our organization. So I'm gonna kick it off to, I believe, Rebecca.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for thinking with us a little bit about the frame of this conversation. I am going to try to share my screen right now. Are you seeing my screen? Yeah.
Yes, we are. It's loading. There you go.
So I wanted to introduce the work of Upwardly Global for just a few minutes. And a little bit about how we're thinking about changing the narrative. I think big picture, we believe that it's incredibly important to switch the lens through which we are viewing immigrants and refugees, and that's sort of the premise of the conversation around narrative. We are working in particular at Upwardly Global, which is a workforce development organization with employers, but we understand very well that the narrative frame that we use is critically important in changing public opinion and policy. And the study that Joshua was just quoting by Migration Policy Institute, I think had a fascinating conversation about the way migration stories and immigration stories are shared in different countries completely changes the way policy in those countries are made regarding immigrants and migration. And so changing stories is immensely powerful in changing countries and in changing policies, attitudes, and the premise on which we're all doing the work that we're doing. Upwardly Global is the first and longest serving organization focused on helping immigrant, refugee, and asylee professionals in their careers in the United States. We were really founded first and foremost to try to shift narrative from a deficit-based perspective to an asset-based perspective. That is, understanding the differences that are brought to the fore by immigrants, refugees, and newcomers to our country, not as deficits, not as things that make them less worthy, but rather as assets that help bring innovation into the country, that help us to be competitive in our economy, and that build the society that we want to see. I think the counter narrative, and we had actually a video that we were thinking of sharing with you, but it felt too complicated to switch medium so often. We'll show some cool videos, I think, in the breakout. But the counter narrative, and you can just imagine the voices that are sharing this and that we've heard recently, is they are taking our jobs. That's the narrative that we're working against. And you know, the narrative that we see is we need to work together to build a stronger country and economy. It's really entirely shifting the they and the our to figuring out what are our shared premises and how can we figure out and understand how we move together to build strength. I think there's a macro perspective that it should be reflected on, and also a micro storytelling perspective. So very quickly, the societal or the macro perspective is that this is not a zero-sum game. At Upwardly Global, our vision statement is an equitable, welcoming country where everyone, including immigrants and refugees and asylees, can contribute and thrive. And the strong understanding, the premise that when we all work together, we actually build more prosperity for everyone. That it's not you taking my jobs and there's only so many jobs, but rather we can see growth and prosperity enlarging. We can enlarge the circle if we work together to do so. The workforce challenge, actually at this particular moment in time, could not be better suited to this story. Right now, we have approximately 10 million open jobs in the United States, and about 2.3 million and underemployed immigrants and refugees. That's actually only in the professional category, and that's not including, and those are people who are and underemployed who are ready to take those jobs, and that's not including other people who we work less with, but who would be able to help fill those jobs across the spectrum. When it comes to the micro perspective, which is the storytelling piece of things that we're going to dive into more today, I think it's important to think that that we are telling human stories that connect with people in personal ways, and that those stories should neither be victim nor villain stories. We're not speaking about people who are victimized, who are poor and unable to fend for themselves, and who we need to help. in sort of a patronizing top-down way, nor are we speaking about immigrants as being villains who are bringing crime, terrorism, et cetera, to the country. There's a in-between place there where we are really humanizing who the people that we work with are. And I'd say there's three key categories: focusing on workforce needs, which we spoke about before. These, people, the work that we're doing, focusing on people bringing engineering skills, medical skills, IT skills, and framing stories, whole stories that connect, that build family narratives. And finally, looking at the barriers that people face, which are awfully similar to the barriers that we all know, and also to their unique contributions. This is the last slide that I wanted to share, and then I'm excited to turn it over to our colleagues at We Speak New York. But really, I think the big narrative frame is that it's possible for us to step out of the us versus them and into the immigration as a mutual benefit for society, for the economy, and for the individuals, and among each other, for both immigrants and non-immigrants. And that those types of narratives, whether they're in that macro sort of theoretical level where you're able to share stats about immigrant contributions, or in the micro storytelling level where you're able to share stories that genuinely relate in a deep and meaningful way to our own stories, is the key to shifting narrative, and that work is critically important now. So thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to David, and we'll look forward to talking more for those of you who join us in the breakout.
Great, thanks so much, Rebecca. And before I hand it over to Karima to kind of get us underway and learning a little bit more about what we do at We Speak NYC and at Moya, just hitting upon some of your points, Rebecca, I think really reiterating, it's not a zero-sum game. We're really gaining from our diversity, and our diversity as an asset and as a strength. We can definitely, relate to that in what we do in our work, and that also as a narrative, as a means to connect with, to empathize, and to really empower. And it's a great tool that we definitely incorporate into the work that we do. So with that, I'll hand it over to Karima to give you all a little bit of a better sense about what we do at We Speak.
Thank you so much, David. David spoke of empowerment, and we really dive deep into that. We Speak, previously known as We Are New York, was created by the New York City's Mayor's Office and the City University of New York. Our program provides civic-focused instruction through an array of multimedia tools and resources to support the field of adult education and New York City's Black, Brown, and immigrant English language learners through English conversation classes, knowledge of city services, information sharing, and the promotion of self-advocacy. So currently, our program is 12 years old, and currently We Speak NYC is right now being developed and administered by Moya for short, or the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs. And we still work closely with our curriculum developers at CUNY. The Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, our mission over there is to promote the well-being of immigrant communities by recommending policies and programs that facilitate the successful integration of immigrant New Yorkers into the civic, cultural, and economic life of the city. And so you may know a few programs that Moya has created. ID NYC, the city's municipal ID card that's free, Action NYC, a program that connects New Yorkers to free immigration legal help, NYC Care, another program that connects New Yorkers and guarantees low cost and no cost services to New Yorkers who do not qualify or cannot afford healthcare. Or health insurance, I should say. So We Speak NYC is the city's English language learning program. Our videos are Emmy-award winning. We're really proud of that. And we have education curriculum that helps intermediate English language learners practice and improve their language skills. All our lessons are geared towards learners understanding more about their rights as New Yorkers, how they can access city services and resources, and participate in self-advocacy and civic engagement. Also understand more about the agency that they have. We work with community-based organizations, schools, and other institutions to support the various needs of New York City's communities. And with the pandemic, we were able to transition all our in-person programming online, making our program more accessible to institutions that really went far and wide, even beyond the boundaries of the city. Our videos cover important themes and topics. Today, we're speaking about narratives and how important they are in our collective understanding of the world around us. Our videos put immigrants at the core of each story, speaking to authentic representation that's seen and experienced in New York City. Our themes include topics that are really important, topics that are helpful for everyone to understand and know more about. Some of these include mental health, food assistance, career and professional development, workers' rights, and some ways in which parents can navigate the large platform of the DOE, Department of Education, and better engage in their children's education. To give more of an idea on how we achieve this, I'd like to show a fun video, our short trailer for our second season, and I'll hand it over to David for that. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Karima. And hopefully now you can all see on your screen our website. So here you'll be able to find the trailer, and I'm going to show now the trailer to season 2, just so you all can get a little bit of a better sense of our program, and then afterwards we can chat a little bit before we move into our breakout rooms. So here we go.
The American dream is a house and a car.
The American dream is freedom.
The American dream is the immigrant dream.
Oh no, I think Sampton is talking about the menu. The American dream is a cheeseburger deluxe with fries.
I want the American dream.
They are called вареники.
Are they from Russia?
No, the Bronx, my kitchen.
This is your last year before college, Shuni. You need good grades.
Don't worry. I'll wear my pink hijab for good luck.
Cesar, I'm sorry, but I have to give him your job.
The place where I used to work ripped me off. They fired me because I was sick, and they didn't pay me for 2 weeks.
The Sunrise is a great pre-K. I would like to work there someday.
Are you a teacher too?
No, not yet. Maybe one day.
I always wanted to finish a school, but I couldn't because I had to help my parents raise my brothers and sisters.
Do you ever think about leaving?
Leaving?
Going back?
I had a panic attack.
A what?
A panic attack.
Someone told me immigrants shouldn't apply.
That's not fair, and that's not true.
You have to plant seeds for a garden to grow. Education is the seeds for a career, a good life.
I can take care of myself.
It's our right.
We built this city.
What does it mean?
It means neighbor.
burritos, biryani, kebab, ramen, mofongo, pad thai. You name it, we've got it all here.
Great. So hopefully there you get a little sense of the different narratives that we use in our program, the power of the narrative and the different ways that we can use them. Before we move into our breakout rooms in just a minute here, I just want to ask you all, from watching that trailer, what does that tell you about our program? What kind of issues are brought up? Can you identify anything about We Speak NYC after watching that trailer? Sort of what sticks in your mind after watching that? Feel free to use the chat, or if you'd like to raise your hand or unmute, I'd love to hear some voices, sort of what your takeaways were from that trailer. Great, thank you. So I see here a few coming in. So wage theft, even assimilation. So we have some very real topics coming up here. Some are very serious, right? There is also that lighthearted element that comes in at points too. Many different perspectives, so kind of the diversity of the perspective, the different voices, the different backgrounds that are highlighted there. Definitely, Anna, some carryover with the work Upwardly Global is doing as well, I agree. Emphasis on the diversity. So the diversity that we find in New York City specific, but like Karima said, I think that the carryover in this program nationally, we have programs using it, as well as in some cases internationally. So kind of highlighting the diversity in your own setting, inclusivity, themes of inclusivity and diversity of cultures, diversity as an asset, you kind of see that there as well. So I know we're tight on time and I want to give us all a lot of time in our breakout room. So I'm going to hand it over to Nancy to actually wrap things up here and then get us into our breakout room, so where we can continue our conversations in either We Speak or with Upwardly Global.
Thank you so much, David, and all of the folks at We Speak and Upwardly Global for leading us in this conversation. So for those of you joining us on Facebook Live, this concludes the Facebook Live portion. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be wrapping up the transmission very shortly. And for those of you that are joining us here on Zoom, please stay on. You will, in just a minute, see a pop-up where you can choose the option of 2 different breakout groups. So select one, and then you will be prompted to head into the breakout section. So as you know, when you signed up for this, this was labeled as a workshop. So we're going to get into the workshop element, and we've got a lot of great conversation and thought-provoking topics here as we unpack the topic of narrative. And I just wanted to remind folks that you're joining one of 6 post-NIC virtual sessions. So we hope that you will join us after this one. We have 2 more left. The next one is on global migration and complementary pathways. I'm putting in the chat here the registration link where you can read the session description and learn a little bit more about that. And then we will conclude with our last webinar. The registration link for that is still forthcoming, so stay tuned to your email, but that will be the 2nd week of December. And that topic is the rise of the anti-immigrant movement and how to combat it. So that's forthcoming, and that will be in partnership with Unidos US. So more information on that. And thank you so much for everyone that is joining the session. Right about now, you should be seeing something pop out on your screen here, or something right there on your menu bar that says join a breakout room. So if you see that, you will see that you have options to join one of 2 breakout rooms. So please make your selection, and we will see you in the breakout rooms. And then in the breakout rooms, they will wrap up the session. We will not be coming back into the main room. So please do select your session, and we will see you shortly. And thank you so much for joining the session and for joining Nick here in this virtual space.